Do you ever treat worship like a to-do thing and not an orientation, going through motions while your heart drifts away? Just remember that misplaced worship can actually fracture the covenant relationship that we have with God. And in Deuteronomy chapter 12, we're going to untangle the place, posture, and practice of true worship, and we're going to understand why God has to centralize worship, right? Centralize sacrifice, and why idolatry is deadly, and how worship actually shapes the holiness of the entire community. And I'll give you one immediate practical action to re-anchor your worship in this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help build your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. If you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Now let's get a little bit of context into the chapter. So Deuteronomy chapter 12 actually instructs Israel to destroy high local places, right, or the local high places, and to bring sacrifices to the one place God will choose. It forbids eating blood and pagan practices and links proper worship to social holiness. After teaching love, memory, and family formation, Moses is now going to correct the improper and decentralized worship that breeds syncretism, right? So syncretism is adopting the local gods or including worship practices of other cultures in your own, right? And this is going to push people towards embodied, centralized worship that actually protects the covenant identity. Okay, so let's take a look at the first 8 verses. The focus here is going to be destroying local high places, bringing offerings to the chosen place. And the engagement question for you to stay focused is, why do we need to centralize worship? Wouldn't local devotion be better for accessibility, right? These are the statutes and ordinances that you must diligently observe in the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given you to occupy all the days that you live on the earth. You must demolish completely all the places where the nations whom you are about to dispossess served their gods, on the mountain heights, on the hills, and under every leafy tree. Break down their altars, smash their pillars, burn their sacred poles with fire, and cut down the idols of their gods, and thus blot out their name from their places. You shall not serve the Lord your God in such ways, but you shall seek the place that the Lord your God will choose out of all your tribes as his habitation, to put his name there. You shall go there, bringing there your burnt offerings and your sacrifices, your tithes and your donations, your votive gifts, your freewill offerings, and the firstlings of your herds and flocks. And you shall eat there in the presence of the Lord your God, you and your household together, rejoicing in all the undertakings in which the Lord your God has blessed you. You shall not act as we are acting here today, all of us according to our own desires. Okay, biblical unlock number 1. Why do we need to insist on one place to bring offerings instead of many altars at homes or hills? The reason here is obviously centralization, or having one place of offering, one God to worship, prevents syncretism. You don't want to have theological drift. That is to say, you don't want innovation in the sense that our worship is actually becoming distinct and different and drifting away from what God actually intended. When everybody worships in the same authorized place, doctrine and practice actually stay uniform, and we have public oversight. That is also going to be possible. The community is going to learn a shared liturgical language. A central worship forms that memory within the community and accountability, so that worship is actually going to shape identity. It's not going to be something private that you can innovate for yourself. This is actually an important characteristic which is emphasized throughout the Bible, the idea of a structure which is consistent, that is uniform, because if everyone was on their own and being able to judge for themselves what is good, what is bad, what practices that you can include, what practices you can exclude, it's not really the Bible that you trust, but yourself, right? This is what Augustine said. If you go through the Bible and you accept what you accept and you don't accept what you don't accept, right, according to your own personal preference, then it's not the Bible that you trust, but yourself. And this is important. We need to have ordered communal worship that protects the soul from private errors, and public patterns educate the heart more reliably than particular isolated practices. Okay, let's read verse 9 to 14 now. The there's actually going to be cautions here against eating blood and pagan rituals. So why does God forbid blood and foreign cultic rites so strongly in this particular section? Let's read. Verse 9. For you have not yet come into the rest and the possession that the Lord your God is giving you. When you cross over the Jordan and live in the land that the Lord your God is allotting to you, when he gives you rest from your enemies all around you so that you live in safety, then you shall bring everything that I command you to the place that the Lord your God will choose as a dwelling for his name, your burnt offering and your sacrifices, your tithes and your donations, and all your choice votive gifts that you vow to the Lord. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you together with your sons and your daughters, your male and female slaves, and the Levites who reside in your town, since they have no allotment or inheritance with you. Take care that you do not offer your burnt offerings at any place you happen to see, but only at the place that the Lord will choose, in one of your tribes. There you shall offer your burnt offerings, and there you shall do everything I command you. Yet, whenever you desire, you may slaughter and eat meat within any of your towns, according to the blessing that the Lord your God has given you. The unclean and the clean may eat of it, as they would of a gazelle or deer. The blood, however, you must not eat. You shall pour it out on the ground like water. Nor may you eat within your towns the tithe of your grain, your wine, and your oil, the firstlings of your herds and your flocks, and any of your votive gifts that you vow, your freewill offerings or your donations. These you shall eat in the presence of the Lord your God at the place that the Lord your God will choose, you together with your son and your daughter, your male and female slaves, and the Levite resident in your towns, rejoicing in the presence of the Lord your God in all your undertakings. So verses 9 to 18, this is quite important, right? What's the big deal about blood and foreign cultic practices? We're seeing something here in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 16. The blood, however, you must not eat. You shall pour it out like ground, or on the ground like water. Okay, why? Because blood symbolized life. We saw this in Leviticus chapter 17, verse 10 to 12 as well. Blood symbolized life. Life is in the blood, and eating it in pagan rites actually profaned the divine ordering that separates holy from common, and the ban preserves the sanctity of life and prevents the community from absorbing rituals that invert God's character. So these prohibitions against eating blood actually guard theological clarity. What we ingest shapes who we become, right? And this is something which is clearly emphasized in the Bible, that God does not want Israel to be like the neighboring communities, like the pagan and cultic practices that they see around them, right? And the second thing is, there are private eating and public sacrifices. There are two types that we saw in this section. And the private eating shows that daily life must be sustained, but acts that signify covenant standing, so these sacrifices, must be public and regulated. And this again, in the ancient Near East, in the context of ancient Israel, this kept worship from becoming privatized sentiment and actually ties resources to communal worship and support. So the land's produce blesses the whole people, not only just an individual person. So social structures like shared worship actually incarnate theology. That is, faith shows itself in how resources are allocated and how these meals are shared. Okay, finally, let's read verses 19 onwards to 32. This is going to be focused on warning against copying pagan practices again, and how do we keep worship pure and prevent it from becoming a cultural performance. Verse 19, take care that you do not neglect the Levite as long as you live in your land. When the Lord your God enlarges your territory, as he has promised you, and you say, I am going to eat some meat because you wish to eat meat, you may eat meat wherever you have the desire. If the place where the Lord your God will choose to put his name is too far from you, and you slaughter as I have commanded any of your herd or flock that the Lord has given you, then you may eat within your towns whenever you desire. Indeed, just as the gazelle or deer is eaten, so you may eat it. The unclean and the clean alike may eat it. Only be sure that you do not eat the blood, for the blood is the life, and you shall not eat the life with the meat. Do not eat it. You shall pour it out on the ground like water. Do not eat it, so that it may go well with you and your children after you, because you do what is right in the sight of the Lord. But the sacred donations that are due from you, and your votive gifts you shall bring to the place that the Lord will choose. You shall present your burnt offerings both the meat and the blood, on the altar of the Lord your God. The blood of your other sacrifices shall be poured out beside the altar of the Lord your God. But the meat you may eat. Be careful to obey all these words that I command you, so that it may go well with you and with your children after you forever, because you will be doing what's good and right in the sight of the Lord your God. When the Lord your God has cut off before you the nations whom you are about to enter to dispossess them, when you have dispossessed them and live in their land, take care that you are not snared into imitating them, after they have been destroyed before you. Do not inquire concerning their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their God? I also want to do the same. You must not do the same for the Lord your God, because every abhorrent thing that the Lord hates they have done for their gods. They would even burn their sons and their daughters in the fire to their gods. You must diligently observe everything that I command you. Do not add to it or take anything from it. So, final biblical unlock: how can we prevent worship from turning into a cultural mimicry or mere performance? By constant catechesis, constant learning, constant teaching, clear boundaries, and formative practice that root worship in scripture and story. Moses says a warning which is preventative, right? Regular instruction and accountable celebration keep the community from adopting neighboring rites or reducing worship to aesthetics. Genuine worship is actually marked by right motive, whether it be the fear of God, and the right means authorized rights, and right ends, whether that be justice and mercy. Remember, we have the responsibility. Those who know must teach. And notice what it says in verse 31, right? You must not do the same for the Lord your God, because every abhorrent thing that the Lord hates, they have done for their gods. They would even burn their sons and their daughters. Now, whilst this may seem extreme, it is actually a natural consequence of their own actions, right? They have such a poor representation of God that they are willing to sacrifice their own sons and daughters for their gods. And Israel is commanded never to do anything like this. This is very important. Okay, let's see how this chapter fulfills Jesus Christ. Deuteronomy chapter 12 has an emphasis. Its emphasis is on correct place, pure practice, and inward motive. And all of it finds its deepest fulfillment in Jesus Christ, as Jesus reorients worship from place-bound sacrifices toward worship in spirit and truth. The incarnate Son mediates God's presence, so worship is now centered on person and spirit rather than just geography alone. And this does not abolish the need for ordered worship or communal formation. Rather, Christ fulfills the law's intent, worship shaped by true knowledge of God and a transformed heart. That's why we read in John chapter 4 verse 24, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth, away from externals and toward heartfelt communal devotion. Okay, how can we apply this chapter practically? Well, it's important to recognize that our worship needs to reflect God and God alone. It needs to be specific to God, one God forever and ever. So we need to ask ourselves, does this practice draw us into God in spirit and in truth, or does it reflect cultural habit without meaning? If it is the latter, you need to reframe it so that we do not border on cultural idolatry. And the second thing is, we can have shared meals in memory, right? We can remember the Lord our God when we pray together, when we eat together. And this is the important point, because we do not want to forget our God during these times of tribulation. We do not want to forget our God when we're going into distant lands. We do not want to forget our God when we're in environments or communities where the Christian life is not valued as much. Okay, so organizing simple communal meals and remembering, saying grace, praying together, all of this forms that public memory that shapes the shared provision of God's intended purposes. Alright, well, that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. We learned that God centralizes worship to protect doctrine, to prevent syncretism and idolatry. And there were prohibitions against eating blood or pagan rituals to preserve the sanctity of life and prevent corrupted devotion. In the next episode, we're going to move from order to guardrails against false prophets and idolatry in Deuteronomy chapter 13. We'll ask how a covenant people discerns truth and protects purity in the face of seductive lies. You don't want to miss it. So, if If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating the show and following. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.